If you keep saying yes when every part of you wants to say no, this is for you. Because if you don't fix this, your nights, your weekends, and your self-respect will keep getting traded away for other people's plans. Today I'll give you one line and a simple rule that help you stop people-pleasing without blowing up your relationships. The part that will surprise you is how we slow down your reactions without turning you into a doormat. If that sounds like something you need, stay with me. You're standing in your kitchen, half scrolling, half staring at the open fridge, trying to decide if you're actually hungry or just tired. Your phone lights up again on the counter. It's that coworker you like well enough, asking if you can just hop on a quick Zoom tomorrow morning before your already packed day. Your stomach tightens. You know you don't have the bandwidth, but your thumb still hovers over the keyboard, automatically typing, "Yeah, sure, no problem." A second later, another text comes in from a family member with a favor, then a friend dropping a "you free" later, and your chest feels heavy in that specific way it does when you know you are about to betray yourself again. Here's the uncomfortable truth: half the chaos in your life doesn't come from what other people are doing to you, it comes from what you are allowing. You're not just overworked, overcommit, and overstimulated. You're over yeses. You keep saying yes when you mean maybe, or no, or absolutely not, and then you wonder why your evenings are full of resentment and low-level anxiety. You think you're keeping the peace, but inside, you're losing respect for yourself a little bit at a time. The pain shows up in very specific places. At work, you volunteer for projects you don't have time for because you don't want to seem difficult or uncooperative. On your calendar, you squeeze meetings back to back and then feel guilty for showing up late or half present. In relationships, you agree to favors, rides, errands, emotional support sessions, and "can we talk" calls at 11 p.m., then lie awake replaying the day and feeling irritated at everyone, including yourself. It costs you sleep. It costs you to focus. It costs you the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your word is aligned with what you actually want. If nothing changes, 5 years from now you're still going to be that person who feels permanently behind, low-key bitter, and secretly scared people will leave if you stop being useful. Today, I want to help you become someone different. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a simple way to check decisions against your actual values instead of your fear of disappointing people. You'll walk away with a single sentence you can use to say no politely without over-explaining or apologizing yourself into a corner. And you'll start turning your calendar into a boundary-backed map of your real life, instead of a chaotic museum of everyone else's priorities. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. This is about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your self-respect in small, concrete ways that you can start using today. First, we'll get clear on the invisible pattern behind your automatic yes, so you can see the trap before you fall into it. Next, we'll build a tiny pause into your responses, a simple rule that forces you to slow down long enough for your values to catch up with your mouth. Then we'll connect that pause to a values check, so you're not just avoiding guilt in the moment, you're choosing who you want to be long-term. After that, we'll move your boundaries out of your head and into your calendar, so you can literally see your principles on the screen in front of you. Finally, we'll pull it all together in a real Friday night scenario and walk through how this new way of responding keeps you calm, clear, and connected instead of explosive or checked out. In a bit, we'll walk into that Friday night moment where you're exhausted, your phone lights up with a guilt-laced request, and you can feel old patterns rising in your chest. That's where these tools either hold or they don't, and you'll see how one sentence and one small pause completely change the outcome. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Not just because it helps the channel, but because this might be the moment you stop treating your own needs like an optional extra in your life. You can't become principled if you keep answering people faster than you can hear yourself think. The first shift is simple: you stop giving on-the-spot answers to non-emergency requests. When you respond instantly, you're not really deciding, you're escaping discomfort. You're dodging the awkward pause, the possibility that someone might be disappointed, or the fear that they'll think less of you. If you never change this pattern, your days will always be built on what felt least awkward in the moment, not on what actually mattered to you. This works because your nervous system is loud and fast, and your values are quiet and slow. The jolt you feel when someone asks for something is your brain scanning for threat. Will they be mad at me? Will I look selfish? That scan happens in a split second, and before your deeper mind has time to ask, "Do I even want this?" your mouth has already said yes. By forcing a pause, even a small one, you are literally widening the gap between stimulus and response. That's what a calmer, more focused version of you does. They don't let other people's urgency control their decisions. They buy themselves enough time for their principles to get a vote. Here is the exact line you can start using: "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." That's it. If you want to soften it a bit, you can say, "I appreciate you thinking of me. Let me check my schedule and get back to you later today." You're not saying yes. You're not saying no. You're creating a buffer, which is where real decisions happen. It sounds normal in North American English, it doesn't offend, and it buys you space. Picture this in action. You're at your desk working through a tight deadline when a Slack message pops up from your manager. "Hey, any chance you can take on this extra client meeting tomorrow afternoon?" They're kind of a handful, but you're so good with people. The old pattern kicks in. You feel a little rush of pride at the compliment, mixed with dread about your already overloaded schedule. Normally, you'd type, "Sure, I can make it work," and then spend the rest of the day stressed about when you'll prepare. This time, you take a breath and remember the rule. You type, "Thanks for thinking of me. Let me check my schedule and get back to you in a bit." You close Slack. You look at your calendar. You see that if you say yes, you'll be working into the evening again, with no margin for rest. After a few minutes, you reply, "I've checked my schedule, and I'm at capacity tomorrow afternoon. I won't be able to attend that meeting." You feel a twinge of guilt, but it passes. What stays is a quiet sense of alignment. You didn't abandon yourself to avoid a 2-second awkwardness. Your tiny action today is straightforward. For the next 24 hours, you do not give an immediate yes to any request that involves your time, energy, or money, unless it is an actual emergency. Every time someone asks for something, you use some version of, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." You can respond later that day, but you do not decide at the moment. Hold on to this one line, because when we get to that Friday night story later, it's the sentence that keeps you from turning your whole weekend upside down. Once you've created a pause, the next step is deciding what you're actually protecting. If you don't know your values, any request can sound reasonable, and any guilt can feel like proof you're doing something wrong. The shift here is to move from people-pleasing to principle-keeping. Instead of asking, "Will they be upset?" you start asking, "Does this fit the kind of life I'm trying to build?" If you skip this, you'll still get stuck in overthinking, using your pause just to replay every possible reaction in your head. This works because your brain needs a simple filter. When you're tired or stressed, you won't run a complex moral analysis on every request. You'll default to your oldest habits. But if you have a small set of values stated clearly, it becomes much easier to line up decisions with them. The Stoic idea here is that your character, not the situation, is what you control. As Marcus Aurelius reminds you in his writings, your response is always yours to shape. Once you know what your priorities are, no single ask has the power to redefine you. You stop treating every "can you help me with this" as a referendum on whether you're a good person. Here's a simple self-question you can use after you say, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." Ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? If the answer is something that deeply matters to you, rest, time with your kids, your health, your focus time, then you have your answer. You can even say out loud, "My value of rest, family, health, focus matters more than this request." It might feel clunky at first, but it resets your internal scoreboard from "do they approve" to "am I aligned?" Imagine you live in a small apartment in Toronto and you've promised yourself that weekday evenings after 7 are for recovery, cooking a real meal, moving your body, maybe watching a show without checking email. One Tuesday afternoon, a friend texts, "Hey, I'm moving on Thursday, any chance you can help me pack tomorrow night? I really need you." Your immediate instinct is to say yes, because you care about them and you hate imagining them disappointed. This time you respond with, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." You look at your week. You've stayed late at work twice already. You feel your body dragging. You ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? The answer, sleep, sanity, and the promise you made to yourself. You text back, "I'm glad you reached out, and I care about you. I've committed to keeping my weeknights clear this week to recover, so I won't be able to help pack tomorrow. I hope it goes smoothly, and if you still need help on the weekend, let me know." You honor your value, not just your friend's urgency. Your tiny action today is to write down 3 values that feel non-negotiable for this season of your life. Maybe it's health, family, focused work, or financial stability. Put them somewhere you can see, on your phone's notes app, on a sticky note near your desk. For the next few days, every time a request comes in and you've bought yourself that pause, ask, "If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to?" and compare your answer to those 3 values. Even with a pause and your values in mind, you need a way to actually say no without spiraling into guilt or over-explaining. A lot of people-pleasing starts here. You don't know how to say no cleanly, so you either disappear, lie, or drown the other person in a long justification that invites argument. The shift now is to treat no as a normal part of adult life, not a moral failing. If you never learn to say no directly, you'll keep saying a messy version of yes that breeds resentment and half-hearted effort. This works because people generally respond to the frame you set. When you apologize excessively, pile on excuses, or act like you're doing something wrong by having limits, you train others to see your boundaries as negotiable. You also send your own nervous system a message that your needs are unusual or selfish. A shorter, clearer no tells your brain, "This is allowed," and it tells the other person, "This is a decision, not a debate." Seneca wrote often about the importance of using time wisely. In modern terms, your no is a way of protecting that limited resource. Here's one exact line you can use in North American English that is both kind and firm: "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that." If you want to add a little warmth without opening the door to negotiation, you can say, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that this week. I hope it goes well." Notice what's missing. You're not offering a long explanation, you're not making up a dramatic excuse, and you're not saying "maybe later" unless you truly mean it. Picture this in a workplace context. You're in a small marketing team in Chicago. It's Thursday afternoon, and your colleague pokes their head into your office, looking stressed. "Hey, our client just added a last-minute request for a set of social posts. They want them by Monday morning. Any chance you could stay late tomorrow and crank these out?" You're the fastest writer on the team. You would hear the panic in their voice, feel your own anxiety spike, and say, "Yeah, I'll figure it out," even though you already had plans to unplug on Friday night. Now you remember the pause. You say, "Let me look at what I already have on my plate and get back to you." You step away, look at your workload, and realize that saying yes means sacrificing the deep work time you've blocked for an important campaign. You return and say, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that. I'm fully booked with deliverables that are already committed." They look surprised for a second, but then they nod and say, "Okay, I'll check with the manager." The sky doesn't fall. You go home Friday night as planned, and your weekend doesn't become collateral damage. Your tiny action today is to practice this exact sentence out loud 3 times. "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that." Say it in the mirror. Say it in your car. Say it while you're doing dishes. Get your mouth used to forming the words, so when the moment comes, your body doesn't act like you're doing something outrageous. You're just being honest about your limits. There's another trap that keeps you stuck in people-pleasing: treating your calendar as a suggestion instead of a boundary. If your schedule is wide open on the screen, it's easy to believe you're free just because there's blank space. The shift here is to use your calendar as a tool to protect your priorities, not just to record your obligations. If you don't do this, other people's requests will always feel more real than your personal commitments, because their requests are explicit and your needs are invisible. This works because your brain takes what it sees seriously. When you put a meeting on your calendar with someone else, you treat it as real. You show up on time. You plan around it. But when it's just "I really need to get some sleep" or "I should probably exercise," it lives in your head as a soft wish. Turning your priorities into concrete blocks of time gives them weight. In a way, you're doing what Epictetus talked about: controlling what's within your power. You may not control how many requests come in, but you do control how much time you assign to things that matter to you. Here's a simple line you can use with yourself and others: "If it matters, it goes on the calendar." When you sit down at the start of the week, you block off windows for sleep, for focused work, for a workout, for family time, for whatever your core values demand. These don't go in pencil. They're real commitments. Then, when someone asks for something, you're not deciding in a vacuum, you're comparing their request to an already built map. Imagine you live in a shared house in Seattle and you're trying to get serious about your health. You work a standard 9 to 5, and you've decided that 3 evenings a week, from 6 to 7, you're going to the gym. You put it on your calendar like a meeting. Tuesday afternoon, your roommate texts, "Hey, everyone's going out for happy hour at 6. You in?" Old you would see an empty-looking evening, forget your intention, and say, "Sure, I'll be there." Then you'd feel guilty for skipping the gym and sluggish the next day. New you see the calendar reminder pop up, gym 6 to 7 p.m. You pause, remember your values, and text back, "That sounds fun. I've committed to hitting the gym tonight, so I won't make happy hours. If you're doing something later, let me know." Your calendar backed you up. Your no wasn't random, it was a reflection of a choice you'd already made. Your tiny action today is to look at the next 7 days and block off at least 3 small windows that represent your values. It might be 30 minutes of focused work in the morning, a set bedtime, or an hour of connection with someone you love. Treat those blocks as non-negotiable. When new requests come in, look at your calendar first. If their ask collides with a value block, you have your answer. Even when your calendar is structured and your no is clear, people-pleasing can sneak back in through your fear of other people's feelings. You might think, "I can handle being tired, I just can't handle them being upset with me." The shift here is to separate your responsibility from their reaction. You're responsible for being honest and respectful. You're not responsible for managing every emotion other people might have about your choices. If you collapse that distinction, you'll end up living your life as a constant PR campaign, always trying to control how everyone sees you. This works because your nervous system is wired to treat disapproval like danger. Social rejection used to mean literal risk in human history, so your brain overreacts to a disappointed tone, a delayed reply, or a sigh. But as an adult, you have to train a new understanding: discomfort in someone else does not automatically equal danger for you. When you hold that line internally, you stop scrambling to fix feelings that aren't yours to fix. You start embodying the Stoic idea that other people's judgments are outside your control, while your integrity is firmly within it. Here's a sentence you can use with yourself whenever you feel guilt rising after a boundary: "Their feelings are theirs to process, my job is to be honest and kind." You can also adapt it in conversation if needed: "I hear that you're disappointed, and I get it. I still need to stick with my decision." Both versions acknowledge the other person's reality without giving it the power to rewrite your choices. Think about a family scenario. You live just outside Boston, and you've decided that Saturday mornings are for rest and personal projects because your weekdays are packed. Your parent calls on Friday night: "Hey, I need you to drive over tomorrow morning and help me with some errands." You don't have kids, so your schedule's more flexible. The old pattern kicks in, you feel a rush of guilt, plus that old story that you're selfish if you don't jump in. You pause. You check your calendar and see your Saturday morning block: rest and personal time. You say, "I won't be able to come tomorrow morning. I've already committed to that time." They respond, "Wow, it must be nice to be so busy you can't help your own parent." Your chest tightens, the urge to backtrack is strong. This time, you quietly remind yourself, "Their feelings are theirs to process, my job is to be honest and kind." You breathe and say, "I hear that you're disappointed, and I get it. I still need to stick with my decision. If there's a time next week that works for both of us, we can look at that." They may stay annoyed. They may not. But you don't abandon yourself to manage their momentary reaction. Your tiny action today is to write that sentence somewhere you can see: "Their feelings are theirs to process, my job is to be honest and kind." The next time you feel a wave of guilt after saying no, don't rush to fix it. Instead, read that sentence and sit with discomfort for 60 seconds. Notice that you can survive it without reversing your decision. Sometimes people-pleasing isn't about the yes or the no, it's about the way you over-explain. You say you can't do something and then immediately launch into 5 paragraphs of detail, hoping the other person will approve of your reasons. The shift here is to stop treating your boundaries like a court case you have to win. A clear, brief answer communicates that your time and energy matter. If you cling to over-explaining, you invite debate and subtly signal that you need permission to take care of yourself. This works because language frames reality. When you pile on justifications, you're framing your choice as something that requires defense, which can make the other person feel entitled to cross-examine you. You also keep yourself stuck in anxiety because you start rehearsing every possible counterargument in your head. A concise statement, by contrast, frames your decision as normal and final. It also models healthy behavior for everyone around you. Here's a practical line you can use to keep things simple: "That doesn't work for me." You can add a small, non-defensive explanation if it genuinely helps, like, "That doesn't work for me this weekend," but you stop there. You don't list every task you have, how tired you are, or why you deserve rest. You let your no be a full sentence. Picture a relationship example. You're dating someone in Vancouver who loves going out late, but you've realized your body and brain function best when you're in bed by 10 on weeknights. They text on a Wednesday at 7, spontaneous idea, "Let's hit that new bar downtown at 10:30 tonight." Old you would feel torn, then send a long message about your workload, your sleep, your stress, hoping they'll understand. Sometimes they'd push back, "Come on, live a little," and you'd cave. New you replies, "That doesn't work for me tonight. I have an early morning." When they say, "You're always tired, and can't you just rally," you resist the urge to write a novel. You say, "I get that you want to go out late. My weeknight cutoff is earlier. Maybe we can plan something this weekend that fits both our schedules." You don't argue. You don't persuade. You state your reality and leave room for theirs. Your tiny action today is to notice one place where you're tempted to over-explain and shorten your reply by half. If you normally send a long paragraph when declining, cut it down to 2 or 3 clear sentences. Use "that doesn't work for me" as your anchor. Let the silence after your message do its job instead of filling it with more words. Digital life is where a lot of your boundaries quietly die. Group chats, email threads, Slack pings, DMs, and notifications can make it feel like you owe everyone an instant response. The shift here is to create boundaries around when and how you're reachable, instead of letting your phone dictate your emotional state all day. If you never do this, you'll keep living in a permanent low-level flinch, always bracing for the next request, apology, or ask. This works because your attention is limited. Every time a notification pulls you away from what you're doing, you pay a cognitive tax. Over time, that tax shows up as irritability, decision fatigue, and a shorter fuse with the people you care about. By setting intentional reply windows and muting certain channels, you're not being rude, you're being responsible with your focus and mood. You're also teaching others how and when to expect access to you, which reduces misunderstandings. Here's a practical line you can send to people you interact with often: "I'm trying to be more intentional with my time, so I usually reply to messages between time windows. If something's urgent, feel free to call." In North American culture, this is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. It sets expectations without drama. With yourself, you can also use "I don't have to answer right now" as a mantra when your phone lights up. Imagine you work remotely from your apartment in Denver, and your team lives on Slack. You've been feeling constantly on edge because messages come in at all hours, and you find yourself checking your phone late at night to make sure you didn't miss anything. One afternoon, you decide to create a boundary-backed schedule. You set Slack to Do Not Disturb after 6 p.m. and block 2 reply windows in your calendar, one mid-morning, one mid-afternoon. You message your immediate team, "Quick note, I'm tightening up my focus blocks, so I'll mostly be checking Slack around 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. If something's urgent outside those times, you can text or call. That evening, a Slack notification pings at 8:30 p.m. Old you would have grabbed the phone, heart rate spiking. When you see the Do Not Disturb icon, take a breath and say to yourself, "I don't have to answer right now." You put the phone face down and return to your book. The message is still there in the morning. The world did not end. Your tiny action today is to choose one channel that stresses you out the most, maybe it's a group chat or a work app, and set a clear boundary around it. That could mean muting it after a certain time, turning off push notifications, or deciding you'll only check it at 2 specific times each day. If you need to, send a short message like, "I'll be slower to respond here outside of work hours," so people know what to expect. Even when you're practicing all of this, there's one more internal battle, the voice that tells you you're being too much or too selfish when you hold a line. That voice doesn't just make you feel bad, it actively tries to pull you back into old patterns. The shift now is to start talking back to that voice instead of obeying it. You replace vague self-criticism with a clear identity statement: I'm someone who respects my own limits. If you don't challenge that inner script, you'll keep reverting to people-pleasing whenever you're tired or vulnerable. This works because your brain believes what it hears repeatedly, especially when it's in your own voice. If your internal narration after every boundary is, "I'm difficult, I'm letting people down, I'm the problem," your nervous system will associate saying no with shame. On the other hand, if you consciously pair your new behavior with a stronger identity, "This is what healthy, grounded adults do," your brain starts to see boundaries as an expression of strength, not selfishness. Over time, that makes it easier to choose discomfort in the moment over resentment later. Here's a simple self-script you can use right after you hold a boundary: I'm allowed to take up space. Saying no here is an act of respect for myself and others. You don't have to shout it or write it on a poster. You just say it quietly, in your mind or under your breath. You're reminding yourself that you're not sabotaging relationships, you're making them more honest. Picture a friendship scenario. You live in a small city in the Midwest, and you have a friend who often calls you late at night to vent about their problems. You care about them, but you've noticed that after those calls, you lie awake for hours, wired and drained. You decide to draw a line: no emotionally heavy calls after 9 p.m. One night at 9:45, your phone lights up with their name. The old pattern would have you answer, even as you cringe, and then spend an hour absorbing their stress. Tonight, you let it go to voicemail. You text, "Hey, I saw your call. It's late on my end, and I'm already winding down for the night. I'm happy to talk tomorrow after work." Immediately, the inner critic pipes up: "You're a bad friend. They needed you." Your stomach twists. This time, you respond internally: "I'm allowed to take up space. Saying no here is an act of respect for myself and others." You breathe. You remind yourself that showing up as a half-awake, resentful listener doesn't actually help them. You feel the discomfort but don't override your boundary. Your tiny action today is to choose one identity phrase that supports the person you're trying to become. It might be, "I'm someone who honors my limits," or "I'm someone who makes decisions from values, not fear." Write it down and say it right after your next no, even if the no is small. Pair the behavior with the identity until they feel connected. Let's pull this into a single evening, because this is where everything you've learned is either real or just theory. It's Friday night. You're in your apartment, finally exhaling after a long week. You've got a simple plan: make dinner, watch a show, and maybe go to bed a little early. The kind of quiet night that doesn't look like much on social media but feels like survival in your body. The dishes are in the sink, the pan is heating on the stove, and your phone is face down on the counter. It lights up anyway. You glance over. It's a friend you care about, the one who often runs a little chaotic. The text is long. "Hey, I know this is last minute, but I'm freaking out. I have to move some stuff out of my ex's place tonight before tomorrow morning, otherwise he's going to toss it. My car is in the shop. Can you drive me over and help me haul everything? I really, really need you. You're the only one I can count on." You feel the old surge of panic and responsibility. Your chest tightens. In your mind, you see the night twisting: a stressful drive across the city, awkward tension with the ex, sweaty hauling of boxes, getting home way later than you planned. You also feel the old story kicking in: if I don't help, I'm a terrible friend. Your thumb hovers over the keyboard. The first impulse is to type, "Yeah, okay, give me 20 minutes, even as your stomach sinks. But you've been practicing. First, you pause. You literally put the phone back down for a moment. You feel your feet on the floor, the pan on the stove. You remind yourself that you do not have to answer instantly. You pick up the phone and type, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." It feels weird to use that line on a Friday night, but you send it anyway. You've bought yourself space. You walk to your calendar, either on the wall or on your laptop. You see what you blocked out for tonight: rest, downtime, recovery after a brutal week. It looks almost laughably simple on the screen, but you remember the promise you made to treat these blocks as real. You ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? The answer is obvious: you're saying no to the only real rest you've had all week, no to a calm nervous system, no to keeping your word to yourself. You also see tomorrow morning's block of focus time that will get wrecked if you're exhausted. Your values speak up: health, stability, honoring commitments. Your phone buzzes again. Please? I don't know who else to ask, your friend writes. You feel the guilt wave rising. You hear the inner critic: you're being dramatic. It's just one night. This is what good friends do. You take a breath and reach for your identity phrase: I'm someone who honors my limits. Then you remember the boundary sentence you've been practicing. You type, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that tonight. Your heart is pounding as you hit send. A moment later, the reply comes in hot. Seriously? Wow. I thought you were my friend. Everyone else is busy. I guess I'll just figure it out. The guilt spikes hard. Your face is warm. You feel the urge to backtrack and say, okay, fine, I'll come. Instead, you remember that their feelings are theirs to process. You take another breath and type, I hear that you're stressed, and I get that this is a tough situation. I still need to stick with my decision tonight. If you want to talk tomorrow about other options, I'm here. You send it. Then you put your phone on Do Not Disturb and flip it face down. For a few minutes, your body buzzes with adrenaline. You second-guess yourself. You imagine them being furious, telling other people you're unreliable. But then something else happens. Your heart rate starts to slow. You stir your food in the pan. The apartment stays quiet. 10 minutes later, your phone buzzes once more. When you check it later, you see, okay, I asked another friend and they can come. Sorry for snapping. You realize that the crisis you were rehearsing in your head wasn't the only possible outcome. Your friend found another solution. The world didn't collapse just because you didn't sacrifice yourself on demand. You eat your dinner. You watch your show. You go to bed at a decent hour. The next morning, you wake up without that familiar resentment hangover. You're not starting the weekend behind on sleep and patience. You're not replaying a stressful night in your mind, angry at your friend and angrier at yourself. Instead, you feel something new, a small but solid pride. You treated your needs as real. You answered from your values, not from fear. The next time someone asks for something big at the last minute, you'll remember this night. Not as proof that you're selfish, but as evidence that you can hold your ground and still care about people. At its core, this lesson has been about shifting from automatic yes to principled choice. It's the difference between reacting to every request like it's an emergency and responding from a grounded sense of who you are and what you stand for. Instead of living scattered and resentful, you start moving through your days more focused and intentional, even when other people have big feelings about your limits. We began by looking at that common moment in the kitchen with your phone lighting up and your thumb hovering over yet another sure, no problem, even as your body tenses. From there, you learn to create a small but powerful pause, using a simple line like, let me check my schedule and get back to you, so your nervous system doesn't hijack your decisions. Next, you tie that pause to a values check, asking, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to, and making sure your answers align with the life you're trying to build, not just the approval you're trying to keep. After that, you practiced a clean, polite note: thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that, so you don't drown in explanations or open the door to endless debate. You saw how turning your calendar into a map of your values, not just your obligations, gives your boundaries visible weight. You separated your responsibility for being honest and kind from other people's responsibility to handle their own emotions, reminding yourself that their feelings are theirs to process. You trimmed back the urge to over-explain, using short, firm phrases like, that doesn't work for me, and you set digital boundaries with clear reply windows so your attention isn't constantly hijacked by notifications. You paired each new behavior with an identity statement: I'm someone who honors my limits, and finally, you watched all of it come together on that Friday night when you choose your own well-being over a last-minute, high-pressure request, without blowing up the friendship. Today, there are 3 simple things you can actually do, not just think about. First, for the next 24 hours, don't give an instant yes to any new request for your time, energy, or money. Use, let me check my schedule and get back to you, and respond later once you've checked in with your values and your calendar. Second, block at least 3 small value-based windows on your calendar for the coming week. Maybe it's rest, focused work, or time with someone you love, and treat those blocks as real commitments when new requests come in. Third, choose 1 boundary sentence and 1 identity phrase from this lesson, write them down, and use them together after your next no, even if it's a small one, something like, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to do that, followed by, I'm someone who honors my limits. If this resonated with you, the next natural step is to look at what happens when someone doesn't respect your boundaries at all. In the next lesson, we'll go deeper into dealing with pushback, guilt trips, and subtle manipulation, and how to stay steady without becoming cold or aggressive. Think of it as, when they don't take you no seriously, Stoic strategies for handling pushback. As you step back into your life after this video, remember that every time you say a principled no, you're also saying a deeper yes to the person you're becoming. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your future self, the one with clearer evenings and a calmer mind, will be glad you did.